Welcome to the UDR podcast. I'm your host, Bill W., and I'm here with a special guest. It's my father. He just had his birthday yesterday, and he is the inaugural guest for the very first BILLWARDLIFE UDR podcast in the video realm of podcasting. We had to do a quick wardrobe change and give my dad a nice shirt. He showed up with his hoodie because he's used to me podcasting with audio only, so it was it's kind of a new thing for him. And so, yeah, Dad, what do you think of the studio?
Oh, that's awesome, son. You're just keep amazing me with your ideas and your movement of your passion. Cool.
Well, you know where I get it.
Yeah, it looks familiar from 44 years ago when I got kick-started into helping people, and I see it in your life already, too.
Nice. Thanks, Dad. So this is a new series that I'm doing. I have my regular UDR podcast, which focuses mostly just on recovery. And then this new podcast, it's going to still be on the same platform, but it'll be branded differently. And this segment, or these first few segments, and I have quite a few really awesome guests. I'm going to bring on Buck Breaker, Ray Don Whitney, Carrie Gladue. And so you're the first guest on this basically First Nation influencer or people who help or have dedicated their lives to serving First Nations people,
Right.
Indigenous people. And I know you've dedicated how many years to doing this so far?
41.
41 years. And if you were to sum it up to what you do and who you've helped, what would that be?
Sum it up. Oh, wow. It's just been a whirlwind of pioneering in the beginning. For 40 years ago, there was still a lot of pioneering happening in Indigenous country with addictions. And I was fortunate enough to be, at the time, the number one training center in the world for Indigenous counseling and addictions interventions and community development, and also the first, the most influential treatment center in the world in Indigenous, which is Palmaker Lodge. So I was fortunate to be tied in with both of them, and got into all kinds of exciting invitations to try various things in the helping field, and I had a reputation of give it to Emile, he'll do anything. So, yeah, I was fortunate to be able to be part of numerous projects back in the early 80s.
So over these years, you're talking early 80s, now we're in, 2024, and you've seen the full gamut of, drugs and how things have changed and how addictions has changed and how working with people has changed. And so we were talking earlier and you said the way that intervention has to happen or is happening today is quite different than how you guys did it. Can you re-describe to our listeners, our viewers, on, your approach where you were inviting people back then and now it's more of a, like, you better get your shit together because these drugs are going to kill you. Can you kind of give us the spectrum of different approaches on how you used to do it and how it's done now?
Well, back then it was like a walking type of system. It was for people that wanted to educate themselves or wanted to change their lives or wanted to prevent the trials and tribulations of addictions at that time. Well, substances mainly, like we were dealing with inhalants, a lot of alcohol, of course. Very, very little about narcotics, opiates. Very rare was opiates back in the 80s. And cocaine, these were almost forbidden to be even talked about.
Mm.
It was a strange culture back then. And a lot of the local reserves were suffering from massive family what do you call damage from alcoholism. So that's what we're dealing with, and I started with at a walk-in open street kind of counseling office. We'd just sit there, 4 chairs, and anybody that walked in would either half intoxicated or was coming off a hangover or wanted to find out about drinking. So we'd grab a coffee and chat with them and check out their desire to make a change in their life. Now, compared to back then, it's almost, now you need a team of what do you call intervention tactics to help someone. You know, you need health services, you need an ambulance. At times, you need professionally trained helpers and medicated stuff to save their life, like what do you call it?
Naloxone?
Yeah, stuff, that kind of stuff. You know, there wasn't that kind of attention back then, and now it's almost critical to force them into treatment in the best way you can. You know, and we're getting so many repeaters in treatment now, which we didn't a lot back then. We wouldn't see them for a while, but now there are people coming in 3-4 times a year.
Yeah.
You know, or various treatment centers.
Yeah.
So it's quite a change.
Yeah, and it is. It's pretty crazy. You know, I've known quite a few guys that, you know, they've sobered up for a few months and then they take a little hit of their drug of choice or their drug of no choice and they're gone again and they're back and they're gone and they're back and they're gone. And many of them end up dying.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Every time you take these substances today, you risk maybe not coming back.
Exactly.
Right? And I guess that's quite a bit different from your day when it was mostly alcoholism and maybe inhalants too, right?
Yeah, it was, the financial availability for Indigenous people back then was nowhere near what it is today.
Mm-hmm.
You know, the services to get money to supply your addiction was quite different, and you know, they didn't have much choice but to get high on scary substances.
Like gasoline or whatever.
Gasoline, even, you know, like the Davis Inlet project, that was, you know, the photocopying fluid, you know, killed some young people, and palm makers were asked to intervene, and we held a camp for, I think it was about 8 or 9 months in northern Alberta to help 26, somewhere around our mid-20 people, young people, teens, teenagers, and because the community cried out, you know, do something, and the federal and provincial government that accommodated their cry for help.
Mm. So you talked about being a pioneer in different areas. I know that you had pioneered the first mobile treatment center ever. Is that correct?
It wasn't a center. We took a palm maker 28-day program in its entirety and delivered it right on the reserve, right on the reserve. So that's what we did.
And how did that work?
Wow, that was amazing. Like that was taken from the movement of Alkali Lake, which that movement was about 14 years, where they went from 100% alcoholism to 95% sobriety in 14 years, and that's a documented video of that system, and we more or less compacted into 5 years. In the 5 years, 3 years of planning the mobile treatment and various departments like food, camping, facilities, culture component, all of this special components, and then organizing all that, and then the actual delivery of 28 days, which is the hardest work I've ever done in my career. Even on my day off, I worked 20 hours.
What was hard about it?
Because there's a big difference between a client going to Palmaker's Lodge to a residential center from the reserve and taking the program right on the reserve, where the family is also crying out for help besides the addicted person. And so it's a family disease, and then we ended up counseling families basically, and partners, spouses, and it just those were after-hour counseling sessions, and emergencies and relapses. And, so there was just a lot of chaos at times that we had to handle right on the spot. So,
Wow.
and then after 28 days, we celebrated, and we did 2 years of aftercare with personal issues of many of the clients and their families.
So you brought this program to Ochis, right?
Oh, geez, yeah.
And you set up camp basically, and then you did a 28-day program. And
Right.
then at the end of the program, and during the program, you had to help all the family members who were attached to whatever individual might have been in that program. And then at the end of the program, you implemented a 2-year follow-up process.
Yes, with psychological help, with continued counseling assistance from our staff, and help to guide people's personal issues that they had, I guess, exposed or began to heal in the treatment program, and we offered them continued help.
And how successful do you think that was?
Well, according to the chief at that time, she said it was overwhelming success to a figure around 85% recovery. Life expectancy, the study that she did at that time for the funding on that reserve, the average life expectancy was 24.
Wow,
Yes.
seriously?
Pretty scary, yes.
Holy. Yeah. And so you pioneered that, and I know you bounced around. You were director of the Bonnyville Indian Métis Rehabilitation Center, and it's funny because I was struggling with substance abuse when I was young, and you were the director there, and I actually went and attended that program way back when. When you look back at your time at the treatment center, what are some highlights that stick out for you for that time period?
Well, at that time, I was a director for approximately. I had worked at Palmakers for about 2 years, and some people felt I would make a good director, and I became director of Bonnyville. And it was in financial turmoil at the time, and collectively with 19 staff, we decided that we would do whatever it took to maintain this treatment center. It was necessary for 5 Indigenous communities and 2 Métis settlements. So there were seven communities involved in this treatment center. And so we brainstormed for about a week on various things that we could do to improve the financial situation of the center, and we came up with a whole bunch of ideas. We took in clients from Northwest Territories, from British Columbia on a per diem basis, and also we trained through Nietzsche. We trained some of our staff to become workshop facilitators. Then we hire them out rather than these communities hiring outside people to train their staff or their workers or put on these awareness workshops. So we gained a lot of funds that way and successfully put financial base back into that center. It's still operating today because those 19 people that got together in a room to come up with a solution.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you made a big difference up there, I hear.
Yeah.
That center was a co-ed center, and I know they even had like married couples in that center, did they not? Or couples?
We did some couples, very selective at that time. But the other interesting part was back then, ADAC, which is Alberta Health Services now, was very open to help us try new things. And one of the things that they approved and went along with was we had the idea of turning the center into an adolescent treatment center in the summer, during the summer holidays. Mm-hmm. And this was amazing because in that one, my staff couldn't keep up with the teenagers, right? The night attendants couldn't. These kids were all over the place. So we decided that the communities need to chip in and quickly train some supervisors. And so we had adolescents supervising adolescents for a 14-week program that we'd run, 3 times during the summer. We did that for 2 years. So that was pretty interesting.
Yeah, that
was unique.
Yeah.
And there was also the other interesting, support from ADAC at that time was when we were planning the OCHEES program, we were there at the meeting, and a couple community members came into the meeting and asked powermakers to do something about some sniffing that was happening destructively in the community. They had about quite a few teenagers that were concerned, or parents were concerned about their sniffing children. And as the meetings turned out, we decided that we would take in some youth into Powermakers Lodge and put them through a program. After talking about some unique stuff, we decided that it would, it would be necessary to design a special program for them. So Nietzsche Institute came up with a program for these kids, and we implemented two programs at the same time: the Powermaker Adult program and this special sniffing program for these youth. And when I went down there to pick up the selected youth, I had staff that were on holiday, so I decided I would take on the project myself. And I said, well, I can handle 10 kids. When, I said, I can handle 6 kids. That's right. I said, I can handle 6 kids. So that was going to be my caseload. And when we went down there with the van to pick up these 6 kids, there was 30 kids, or close to 30 kids, all packed and ready to come. And so I increased it to 10, and they brought them into pound makers, and the adults kind of took them under the wing, and it was pretty amazing to watch how they were looked after by the adults, and we lost 4 within the first week, and then but we graduated 6, and those 6 people, after an impact study that I did 9 months later, these 6 people went back to the community and cleaned up all of these sniffing products and sniffing gas containers and barrels, and just cleaned up their community. And I interviewed some of the parents, and they said, yeah, since those kids came back, there's been almost nil visible sniffing. It's pretty cool too.
Awesome. And being in this field, seeing all walks of life struggle with substance abuse, we both know that drugs and alcohol don't care about how rich you are, how poor you are, what skin color you have. But Indigenous people do seem to take addictions to another level. Would you agree? In the way that, within a community, a First Nations community, sometimes these addictions can just ravage the whole community, and almost everybody's affected. And it's not like maybe a regular community in the city or in another country where, they drink, right? But in our communities, it really kind of takes over and is very destructive. Would you agree?
Oh, very much so. When we're doing community workshops, that's the first thing we say. We say 100% of Indigenous people are affected by alcoholism, directly or indirectly. Okay, so yeah, there's. We also mention that we directly affect 6 people. Every human being directly affects at least 6 people, in a good way or in a not so good a way.
So when we look at the problem of alcoholism and now drug addiction within our communities, what I've noticed, because I work in community now doing what I do, and I've met tons of our people over my last 9 years of following this way of life, the Red Road, and trying to help our people and getting to know who I am as a First Nations man. What I've noticed within community, and I think it's an aspect that people don't really want to talk about, and I want to get your take on it, but it's kind of a touchy one. I find a lot of alcoholism and drug addiction, do stem from trauma, but a lot of the trauma that is not talked about is sexual abuse within community. What's your take on that?
Well, when we interviewed those or did treatment with those adolescents, that was the primary issue that they needed that long-term 2-year help with. Was being abused, if not sexually, for sure in a violent way. So yeah, it's rampant.
So
and also still under what do you call it's still hidden.
yeah, it's still under the carpet.
Yes.
and it continually gets swept under the carpet. And I've talked with many community members who know exactly what I'm talking about right now, where sexual abuse is a primary catalyst to addictions because of the trauma that it causes and the shame and the guilt and all the things that come with it. But because, a lot of leadership isn't willing to really take that on, and or maybe, the members within the community might have, you know, secrets of their own. And we're talking about the leadership, you know, on both ends. And so it's an area that really needs to be talked about for people to really heal. But it's such a hard area to talk about because no one wants to talk about it. So you knowing this for all these years, how do you think that it gets talked about, and should it get talked about?
Well, it's of course it's got to be what do you call talked about. If you look at Alkali Lake as an example, they have one of their three healing programs is sexual abuse. They have camps, and they have all the therapists, and they deal with that topic specifically. So, yeah, and back then the solution was when we got requests for community development, community healing, or community workshops. One of the first questions is, would the chief and council be willing to come and receive a 3-day workshop on alcoholism?
Mm.
And if that didn't happen, if they chose not to, then we were able to refuse their request, or modify it in some way, or try to intervene on. So back then there was a lot of more healing that needed to happen in our communities with the chief and council, because they are the key to financial assistance for helping the members of the community.
Mm-hmm. And another hard question, and maybe you don't know the answer to this. Do you think a lot of the chief and councils in Canada are healthy or are unhealthy?
I'd say they're healthier. We still got a ways to go. There was back in the 80s, I was working with a gentleman he was the AFN leader at the time, and Native people were talking about self-government at the time, and his view was Native people are not well enough to self-govern at this time. We would be foolish to accept self-government, and because we're just not well enough to manage it, and that we'd beg the government to take it over, and we'd be setting ourselves farther back to dependency.
Yeah, that's definitely an interesting take. And when was that?
That was that was 1980, 85 or 86 when I was talking to this gentleman. He was a leader of Indigenous people at the time.
Yeah, and I think we have come a long way, and there's some really good communities that we can model ourselves after, right? And one that I'll mention is Tony Alexis. He's a chief from the Alexis Nation up near Edmonton, and
Right.
he's implemented a full, I don't know if it was him or if it was the chief and council as a whole or what, but they're drug testing all of their staff that work for that nation.
Cool.
And, I kind of keep my eye on them. I follow follow him on Facebook, and he's doing some really cool things and holding himself and his people accountable for what they're doing and where they're going and how they're getting there. And it's really cool watching this guy do what he's doing, and he seems pretty healthy. And I've looked at some other nations across Canada, and we have some really healthy leaders stepping up and doing great things for Indigenous people in general. But on the flip side of that, there's still a lot of work, right? A lot of these northern communities that don't get a lot of attention, money either, and they're kind of way out in the sticks. There's still a lot of rampant drug use and sexual violence in a lot of communities up north and all over the place, really. Like, I work in Drumheller Penitentiary, and 60% of that penitentiary is Indigenous guys. And, I've gotten to know many men in there, and, I hear the stories. I work in community 2 days a week, also Mondays and Tuesdays, and I hear the stories. And I've been doing this work now for about 9 years, and I hear the stories, right? And I also hear the stories of these things come up, and then as quickly as they come up, whether it's community member, involved in maybe some behavior they shouldn't be involved in, it's quickly swept under the carpet. And, and people are so worried about their jobs, they don't want to talk about it. There's a lot of nepotism and, lateral violence within community. And so people just keep it quiet. And, I think slowly over time, it just has to become a topic, because it is at the root of a lot of our addictions problems. And even further back down the line, we can't even just blame these perpetrators, because sick people hurt sick people, right? And so the healing journey is going to be a long road ahead. But I've learned along the way, until you acknowledge what the problem is within yourself or within an entity, which would be a community, organization, whatever, you can't work your way out of it. And so at some point, we need some strong people that are going to stand their ground and, talk about these things and build workshops around them, having leadership that support it, even though there's going to be some painful moments through working through it. I think it just has to happen.
Guaranteed, like I said, about that AFN leader, he said it'll probably take at least 3 generations. You're a worker in the 2nd generation, my son. Don't forget the first treatment center, which is Pritchard House in Winnipeg, was founded in 1972. That's not that long ago, right? And so treating and alcoholism and Alcoholics Anonymous is 85 years old now, somewhere around there.
Yeah.
And so that's not in history. That's not very long.
No.
So we have a ways to go, and you're right. It's getting better. There's obvious signs. There's people like Mr. Tony Alexis.
Yeah.
And Teresa Strawberry with the Old Cheese Band back then. Mm-hmm. And interesting part of her, she got the support by sending all of her. They passed a BCR that all chief and council had to go to Nietzsche training to receive education on alcoholism. If not, they had to resign from their position. And all chief and council went to that course except one, and they did refuse his. They did remove his position. So it's movements like that, or pioneer ideas like that, are happening all of the time now. Mm-hmm. And there's such a movement, and we have educated leaders now that are opening doors. We have lawyers, we have judges, and we have so many professional people, you know. It's just, I'm just excited, you know, that people like yourself and some of the helpers, young helpers that I've come across in recovery are just, you know.
Yeah, there's a lot of young passion out there that really want to move our people forward in a good way. We'll get back to the podcast in a second. The opinions expressed on this podcast are solely of the guest sharing or myself. We have no affiliation with any 12-step or recovery program. And if you do like our work, please consider visiting BILLWARDLIFE and supporting what we do. Now back to the podcast. Indigenous people, right, doing it. And, you know, I think a lot of non-Indigenous people have really clued in and dialed into trying to understand the plight of what we've gone through.
Exactly.
And even myself, for my whole life, I was prejudiced against my own people. And I didn't want to be Indian, and I didn't want to know any. And, you know, it took a lot for me to get broken down enough to hear the other perspective. And it was a guy that I worked with when I was working in Peerless Trout First Nations, building that fire hall, you know, back in 2015 or whenever that was. And I was still using back then. But I worked with this native dude. He was a young guy. And I was asking him one day, when are you going to get your shit together? When are you going to, you know, what are you going to do in 6 months? What are you going to do in a year? Where are you going to be? What's going to... And he looked at me and he said, I just spend time with my family every day, and I take my daughter out. I take my son out. We go fishing. We go hunting. We go berry picking. He's like, I don't think that far ahead right now in my life. And at that moment, it was like an epiphany for me. And I was like, holy shit, who's got the better life here? Who's got their priorities straight? And I realized I was off the track. And my thinking was totally making me sick. And I could see the happiness in this guy and his wife and his kids. And he was living day by day, and he was just happy to be working with me. And I thought, like, who's teaching who here? Here I am thinking I'm teaching him, but really he's teaching me the most important things in life. And that was a breaking point for me, because through that period of working with him, I started studying on the internet what happened to our First Nations people. And I would Google genocide, First Nations people, America or Canada or whatever. And I would find all these articles, and I'd find these YouTube clips, and I started realizing what had actually happened. And I could see the evidence of, 500 years of abuse and destruction, and especially in the last 200 years. And these are the results of, these devastating, things that have happened to our people over the years. And I'm living in the results right now. And I am a result of that. I'm pushing away from who I truly am, which was a huge part of my own addiction, right? And so, I'm so grateful that I've opened my mind enough, or I was broken down enough to open my mind to look at the truth, because it really allowed me to get to know who I am and get to know who our people are, and then have a big, huge heart to help those people now, many years into my sobriety. And you've been doing that for quite a long time, right? You've been working with Indigenous people for friggin' 40 years pretty much. And, it's just been a journey. I can't even put it into words this last 10 years for me. But I want to switch gears a little bit. You having your sons, so you have me and my brother Dan, and you have another son who has been in contact with you. You didn't have a lot of contact with him over the years because his biological mother didn't really want him to be in touch with you, correct?
Correct, yeah.
And then when he got old enough, he reached out to you and found you. So you got 3 sons, and by blood, and I know you have another adopted son who lives in Ontario. But primarily for me and Dan, the 2 sons you had with our mom, and you've watched us struggle with addictions our whole life, right? Me as a teenager, and then as an adult, and my other brother as, early 20s into his adult years. And what was it like watching, like, maybe me, because I'm interviewing you, and maybe I don't want to bring my other brothers into this, especially Dan, because he's not here. But what was it like watching me, or maybe both of us, over these years, and the beginning years and then these later years, and maybe me as an adult? Like, give me something.
Well, wow. That's an interesting question, of course. Uh, you know, the knowledge of addiction, the education, the experience, and the direct working with addicted people has given me a respect for the illness. Okay? And it's given me the ability to love the person and hate the illness. So, and you know, I've just had what I once heard the term a walking sermon. You know, you can lead a horse to water, but you can't make him drink. Yes, but you can make him damn thirsty. And that's the way I've looked at my career, whether it's with my own family or the community or anybody that I work with. I try to make them thirsty and try to walk a good path to the best of my ability. And when they ask a question about something they might want to put into their life, I can give them an answer. And
So
that's all I basically have to offer.
Plant a little seed, and then
Exactly.
Water it when the time is right.
Exactly.
So when you were watching me as a young teenager, or, in my 17, 18, 19 years old, you were watching me live action ruin my life pretty much, and I didn't even know that I was doing it, right? And you just stood back. Even though Mom wanted you to, like, really intervene,
Yeah.
you knew about the illness and you knew you couldn't do that?
Yeah, there was, your mom was a mom. And with my experience, it was difficult for me to make some decisions about, like turning her down with what she thought would be helpful. And you got yourself, for example, into a situation, and she wanted me to get you out of that situation. And I just kept backing her off day at a time until you decided that you were going to do something about your situation. And that was the beginning of what happened to be turned out to be the part of your recovery. So it was how do you say? It was a non-enabling. It was a non-enabling behavior at the time.
Mm-hmm.
And if I hadn't known that, and if I didn't believe that something good was going to come out of it, I probably would have bent to your mom's wishes.
Mm-hmm. And as you see, more times than not, it usually makes the problem worse, or extends the pain and suffering longer when people do that, eh?
Yeah. That something I've never done since with other people other than you is pay them to go to treatment.
Yeah.
Shortly after that is when I offered you to come to Bonnieville and come into treatment.
Yeah.
I said I'd pay you.
Yeah. Yeah, well, it got me there.
Yeah.
I don't really remember much about being in treatment when I was 17, but I know I had fun. And I brought a friend with me, and Met a glue sniffer there named Terry. And yeah, that was quite an experience.
Yeah, I bet you met a good counselor too. I remember you talking about her,
Who was it?
Shannon.
Yeah, I can't remember.
You
So,
said she told me she had a lot of influence in your final decision about real recovery.
so flipping forward to when I'm 36 years old and I'm burning down my life with crack cocaine, and 36, 37, 38, 39, 40, 41, 42, all those years, you pretty much knew about it because you're the only one I told. I probably told you 2 years in. And I had my family, Shannon, and the girls, Lila, Lucy, Jillian, my business, my house, all my bills, and all the material things that I had. What was it like watching me self-destruct, like my life and my whole family's life?
Well, first of all, I didn't know about the crack. Okay, I didn't know how serious that you had to hid that really well.
Yeah.
And but I knew about the alcoholism, so I knew about the addiction. I didn't know about the substance that was creating the most turmoil for you. But yeah, it was tough to watch. When you know the end result is going to be something drastic, and fortunately, it was only material things. A lot of you know. Your values changed. You had different values back then. Um, you opened your eyes to what you had as a family with your daughters and the home life you had. And and I was lucky to be able to work for you and witness it firsthand. So, but you also did a lot of things that were in harmony with your family values, with your work ethics, with your. It was amazing to watch the power that you have in yourself to be able to manage as long as you did
Mm.
because of that work ethics and the desire to have materialism and in that different world that you were in back then. And now you're applying the same thing to recovery. So,
Yeah, it's been, there's so many similarities about, kind of getting to a breaking point when I was young and not wanting to live that life anymore, which was basically addiction. And then go, I want something better. And that better was like, I start that business and I build a life. Although I built that life in full untreated alcoholism, a lot of anger, a lot of
yeah.
violence still. Road rage was, pinnacle at its top for many years. And my family had to deal with me like that, which wasn't really fair to them, but that's how it was. But like you said, I did do a good job, and I did. Shannon and the girls really taught me some values, and they softened me. And I really believe Creator gave me 3 daughters and Shannon to soften me up because I was so hard and rigid. But I built that business, 15 hours a day, 7 days a week. I gave her. And there was no doubt that I was going to be successful because I had to be. But it was all on pride and ego and out of resentment of my life. And there was many driving forces to me building that business. And now I look at what I'm trying to build today, or what has built as a result of service, really. Because all I did was start serving in my early recovery, and I started, sponsoring and helping and doing things. And then it changed me fundamentally as a human being. And I did get my career back at year 3 of my recovery, and I didn't want to do that anymore. And then I had a fear run through me because I was sitting at my desk at work one day, and I couldn't wait for my phone to ring. And I had an epiphany, and it was like, I don't want to do this work anymore. I don't want to work for somebody. I don't want to work for this money and make everyone rich and sit here every day. And I just want to help alcoholics and addicts. And then I had, through a prayer to Grandma, because Grandma Black was my higher power, I prayed to her and I said, you know, I just want to help alcoholics and addicts, Grandma, and I don't know how to do that because I'm so worried about paying all my bills and my child support and all these things. And she told me, don't worry about it, Billy. You go help people. I'll take care of you. And then I quit my job. Then
I remember that, yeah.
Yeah, and then I went on this path through prayer and meditation. And, you know, it's basically afforded me everything that I've needed to live: food, water, shelter, love. And that's all it afforded at times, right? But then as I just kept going and just kept serving and doing the things, it's afforded me like a little bit of luxury now, a little bit of space to like breathe, I guess you could say. And it's all kind of come through the change in attitude of service. And I'm so grateful for my life today, and I'm so grateful for you bringing me into recovery and you leading the way into this way of life for me, and you and guys like you pioneering and paving the way for guys like me and a lot of other passionate young people who are out there to help. So what I want to ask you is, we talked about it earlier before the cameras got flipped on, but what kind of feelings do you get through serving people? What does it do for you on the inside?
Well, the recovery, of course, for me is spirituality. And it's that feeling of, a lot of my counseling, I do things and I say things and I know they're directly from the Creator. Okay, or it's something that I learned in training that I never used before, but it came out at this special moment to help this person, and it's just a feeling of overwhelming joy when you've at the end of the session or at the end of the day, if it's in the workplace, that's accomplishment. It's hard to describe. It is that, what do you call that, fifth dimension?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's, and bits and pieces of that throughout the helping career that I've had.
Mm-hmm. I call it, maybe you can relate to this, but I call that the God dope. It's like the feeling that I got from drugs and alcohol. I get that tenfold through serving God's kids. And it was kind of what I was always looking for in the drugs and alcohol, in the women and the gambling and the stuff that I found through working for, for Creator.
I go along with that 100%.
And nothing else will do.
No.
Yeah, it's amazing. So we're kind of getting to the end of this first podcast. And Dad, I just want to, let you know like how grateful I am to have you here on my first Indigenous series of this podcast, and to have you, as my dad, to have you be such an important figure in the serving of Indigenous people and all the work that you've done in your life. And just like your dedication to not chasing the money, to chase helping people. And like, I was thinking the other day, I was flipping through my phone looking at pictures, and because it was your birthday the other day, and I was looking for pictures to put of you on Facebook, and I was like, holy shit, I need more pictures of my pops, right? Because, these relationships with you and with my mom, my daughters, and especially with you and my mom, right? You guys are getting older, and fuck, one day you won't be here. Excuse my language. I don't want to swear, but I guess that's how I am. And like one day you guys aren't gonna be here, and then I'll regret not spending time with you guys, and it just happens like that, right? And I was talking to Mom on Mother's Day last week, and I asked her what her two biggest regrets in her life were, or what her regrets were, and she gave me two. Her first one was not spending enough time with her mom. And the second one was she wished she was a better mother. And she's been a fabulous mother, but you know, of course we all have our own versions of how things are, and I think she was an amazing mom. But for her to say not spending enough time with her mom, and me not spending enough time with my dad, and my mom, and you know, my daughters, and just seeing how fragile life is, I'm just like very grateful to have you in my life and doing what you do and pioneering the path and supporting me every step of the way. And yeah, man, I just want to tell you that I love you and thank you for being on this podcast and just being here and being yourself. And, you know, you got any closing words for our viewers?
Well, it's a two-way street, watching you grow, watching you probably self-educate, you know, what you wanted, career-wise, family-wise. You know, you earned everything. You always have. You've been working since you, what, 12, 14 years old? You know, both of my boys have worked early in their life, same as me. And so it just, your mom has done a fantastic job raising you through my own addiction. And for me not being there, of course, I got my own regrets. And but watching you and your brother and the family wellness that's happening, that's my reward. You know, I relax with life about, yeah, I might have done this better, might have done that better, but overall, Creator, we did okay.
And one of the most profound things that you ever said was, you've said it a couple different times. Like, I know you had open heart surgery last year, and you said it then, and you said it a couple years before, and you're okay when Creator takes you.
Yeah.
Because you know
Exactly.
you've done your best.
I didn't, right from the beginning, I didn't choose this career. I was a traveling sales rep for an industrial company in Northwest Territories. I was in recovery 3 years and living the dream, traveling and fishing on Mondays, getting paid for it, working 3 days, fishing all the way back to Hay River. And I thought that was going to be my future, and I was going to retire and live in the Northwest Territories.
Nope.
And then all of a sudden, two people decided I should become a helper. And then one day I asked, well, what do counselors make? And they showed me, and I just laughed at them. 2 months later, I was working in a treatment center. What happened? You know? Yeah, well, by then I had a little bit of spiritual program, and I thought, okay, God and a Creator started becoming more prominent in my life, and I just fell in love with the work.
Yeah, like I have. So, you know, keep on doing what you do, and now you're an elder.
Yeah, that was interesting. For years, I was just an older.
Yeah.
Now the community looked at me as an elder with special abilities with the career I've had to help hurting people. So yeah,
Yeah, and you're mostly healthy. You're a mostly healthy
yeah,
elder,
yeah,
right? There's a lot of our elders aren't healthy. And so, yeah, you got a lot of gifts and a lot of love and a lot of passion to help. And it just keeps happening, and you don't even really try, right? It just keeps coming to you because that's how it is.
thank you, son.
So I just want to say thank you for being here, and enjoy your road trip with your other son, Dan,
Yeah,
out to BC this weekend. And give him a big hug for me. I haven't seen him in a while, and
okay.
really love my brother and miss him. And
Yeah, he loves you too.
we're not really that close, but we are in a way still. Anyway, thanks for coming, Dad. Love you.
Okay, I love you too, my son.
Okay, bye.